I'm Dr. Cathy Bush.
And hello, I'm Dr. Tara Peters, and we are the Leadership Doctors. And today we have with us Etta Goss. She is the Senior VP of Finance with BCW Global, and we're excited to have Etta with us here today. She's an alum from Northwood University, the MBA program, and so I know Etta from that program and also her undergraduate work at Northwood. So just looking forward to the conversation today. So welcome, Etta.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
It's our pleasure. And so we would love to get started by just doing some level setting in terms of our audience. So we have people who are tuning in to Lessons from Leaders, and we always think it's helpful to give some context in terms of just background. And so if you'll just walk our viewers through your leadership journey and your current role with BCW Global.
So my professional agency career started in the year 2000. I was a finance director at a company called Ketchum, and I was the pretty much the finance lead for all of Texas. The owner of that company is Omnicom. They're the parent company, and Ketchum is the holding company. So I worked there for about 4 years, turned the business around, went from a single-digit profit margin to about 25%, and then moved on to another sister agency called Rapp Collins. I was there for about 13 years. That's kind of where I got all of my bearings there at Rapp Collins. And then we spun off a subsidiary called Javelin. Everyone may be familiar with the names. But the parent company is Omnicom. So I worked for Ketchum, Rapp Collins, and then Javelin. And then once I left Javelin, I went back to Rapp, and then I went on to be a COO at a company called Idea Grove, a mid-sized company in Dallas, integrated firm, another agency, and ran the operations there and the finances. I also served as the interim CEO for probably about 4 months. And then once I turned that business around, we went from no profit. He was breaking even every year. I went on to grow the business, and we ended up netting at about 20% profit margin when I left. And then that's where I left them in a good position to sell. And then now I'm at BCW Global. At BCW, I'm running the finances for all of Texas. There's 2 offices currently, and a third one possibly in later on in the year. So it's Dallas, Austin, and maybe Houston in the upcoming new year.
Okay, so for those who don't know, these are all agencies in the PR world, and so some of them have been kind of in the same space. Some of them have different kinds of specializations, as I understand what you were sharing with us, Etta. And so this next question, I wanted to explore a little bit more about what life looks like during this pandemic, either for your direct relationship with the employees that you're supervising who are in different offices, but many or all of whom are now working from home. And you had shared with me the fact that you just started this job actually after the stay-at-home orders began late in March. And so it would be interesting to hear a little bit about your transition into a leadership job with a brand new group of people in this agency world. In the environment where you're leading while working from home. So give us a picture of what life at the moment, leading during this pandemic, is looking like for you.
Well, a lot of companies, we like to say that this is what we train for as managers, and never before has our role as managers been more important. I happened to slide in during what I call the perfect financial storm. And it was, not only was it month end, quarter end, close, but it was also COVID. COVID is affecting many clients. And for our clients, it did affect some in a negative way, but some in a positive way because of the crisis communications that we offer at BCW. But as far as my people manager skills, I kind of had already prepared for using video conferencing. And I think communication is key. So having that solid form of communication and the platform to be able to communicate via virtually through video conferencing is imperative right now. So coming into a new organization and trying to establish yourself as a leader isn't easy, but it can be done. And I just, one bit of advice I would say is to use your video platform more so than you would in a normal situation. And that's pretty much how I've navigated the system, dealing with COVID and trying to establish myself as a solid leader, is using these platforms to establish that, your way, your best practices, and using it really as a solid form of communication.
Ed, as you were talking about the importance of communication to share best practices, but also to establish yourself as a leader, one of the things that comes to mind, in this context with COVID is there's likely some guiding principles, some values that are really serving you well during this point in time, because not only do you have a new team that you're leading, but you got this unexpected context that we find ourselves in with COVID. So give our audience a sense of what are the leadership principles, what are the values that are really guiding you right now as you help your team to navigate the space that you find yourselves in, and also in the effort to serve your clients.
Well, first, as a manager, it's very important that we be supportive during this time. We be present, and more importantly, we be empathetic. A lot of our employees are dealing with their children being home, having to care for elderly parents, and just the home environment is not typical of if we had a work from home situation. There's a lot of employees that have extenuating circumstances. They don't have a designated area, or there's more than one person trying to work from home. So having that level of empathy is very important. 3 guiding principles that we're using at BCW as people managers is to be honest, set boundaries, and then also ask questions. Being honest and being transparent is so important right now. Employees they want to see leadership. They want to see leadership in the workplace. They want to see it in government. They want to see it across the board. So being honest is very important. And I say, there's some people that say, be strong during this time. I don't necessarily agree with that. I think you can still show some level of vulnerability by expressing your issues that you're having. So if you're feeling overwhelmed or you're feeling a sense of loneliness, say, I really feel lonely, I feel like I need more connection. Just kind of give your employees some of that authenticity, because that encourages them also to be transparent, to be honest. So I think being honest across the board is very important, because you're going to be making decisions that they need to know how you came to that decision, what was the journey like to get to that decision, and where you're going from here based on that decision you've made as a leader. Secondly, set boundaries. Sometimes we get into this, we're home, let's get up at 6 a.m., let's work till 8 p.m., and then there's no clear boundaries there, but then it leads to burnout and resentment. So what I'm doing is encouraging my employees to set the boundaries, cut off at 5 o'clock if we can. Of course, if there's deadlines, in finance, we're closing the books, so there may be some late evenings, but overall, continue to have that start time and that cutoff time that doesn't feel like you're a 24-hour business. And then lastly, ask questions. That kind of comes along with empathy, understanding and asking, how are they feeling? Or do they need anything? Is there something they're dealing with that, that if you pick up on something as a manager, you need to be able to ask those questions and show some level of concern for your employees, because that helps them to feel that the employer is still connected in some way, because not having that face-to-face interaction, you kind of lose that sense of reality with employers. So, really just being involved and communicate more often than you normally would. So that's kind of the guiding principles that I'm following as a manager and trying to stay connected to my employees.
Etta, as I'm listening, I'm hearing several philosophies and principles that I think are going to serve well in the next question I'm going to ask you. And so I'm looking for some specific examples, obviously not naming names, but just thinking about behaviors in this next question, because as you know, Tara and I wrote this book called The Demotivated Employee. And our interest is really when you see an employee whose motivation started here, but now it's starting to take a dive. What are the things leaders can do about that? And so I know that your current work group is rather new to you. You may not have seen where they were here to, so it's possible somebody's motivation is impacted by the stress. But even in the past, Etta, what are some tangible examples or behaviors that you've used when you notice somebody's motivation is dipping, and maybe advice that you could give to anybody that's watching this on how they can get a hold of kind of turning that trend around and keeping motivated people at that high level of motivation?
I always like to use qualitative analytics or measures to understand what's really happening. And I think, the numbers don't lie. So if an employee's work is slipping, I think that's a concrete, tangible thing that someone can monitor to understand where their mind is. So I had an employee that was underperforming. They were a high performer, and then suddenly they were underperforming, understanding that they were typically very accurate in their numbers, because we're in finance, and finding that there was always mistakes being made in the current situation that they were in. And I could see that there was something going on. So what I did was I started meeting with them and having regular meetings, and not skipping those meetings, to have regular communication and have the examples before me to let the employee know that they've made some mistakes. And then we would talk through it. So these are the mistakes you've made, and can we talk about why this is happening? And then just really trying to bring them back through positive reinforcement that on the things that they were doing well. So I do believe that you can identify an employee or a demotivated employee just based on their work. And especially in finance, it'll show, a lot of times it'll show if they're not interested in the work, or they're feeling a lack of enthusiasm. And then also holding them accountable by having those regular meetings is very helpful.
So one of the things that we know is that people are, when they're struggling, to have a manager who will come alongside them and to support those efforts can be really helpful to employees to close the gap or to move forward. And I can also imagine too, though, in your experiences, you've had employees where things weren't a good fit, right? And so you maybe had to redirect and to look at how things might be done differently. So as we think kind of about employees and helping them to find their best place and their best opportunity, helping people to grow in ways that will allow them to achieve their dreams, I think it's important to kind of look at this developmental piece. And so we obviously are going to have some people who are in varying stages of their work life. Some are going to be at the beginning, some are going to be at midterm and looking for that next opportunity. So thinking about those who want to be in a leadership position or are looking for that next opportunity, what would you recommend that they actually do based upon your experiences around growing and developing themselves in order to position for that next career opportunity that they're looking for?
I usually suggest that they find a mentor in the business, in the company. A mentor has many advantages. So they're going to teach you things that you need to know to get to the next level. They're also going to be a resource and an advocate for you when you reach those levels of accomplishment. So I think that's the first thing. The second thing is take on extra projects that you typically wouldn't think that you need to take on. So if you don't think you need to, look for that one project that you don't think you need to take on, but take it on, and then become agile. So that's part of the taking on that project. You know, you really need to be agile and adaptable to different parts of the business. Don't box yourself in. Try different things. So if you're, in, the digital side, then try to learn some of the, what drives that digital piece. And it could be the content, you might want to write something that goes along with the digital piece. So be agile. And then most important thing to me, as a manager and as I'm looking at someone that could advance to the next level, I'm looking for accountability. So someone that can own their stuff, that if you own it, whether it's good or bad. So if you want credit for it, then, by all means, be willing to be accountable for it if there's something that's flawed with it. So those are the things that I think that can help someone at any level go to that next level.
Well, that is great advice, and I'm sure very helpful to those folks who are thinking about how they grow into opportunities such as the kind of role that you have. And so, Etta, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts and insights. Good luck to you as you begin this new adventure with BCW Global. And thank you very much for spending some time with us. It's been lovely hearing your ideas.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. And I hope that the information that I've offered and advice that I've offered, it helps someone along their way.
I feel very confident that it has. And for those of you who agree with me and enjoyed the lessons that you've learned from listening to Etta, we will have her interview posted on our website along with other interviews from other leaders in our Lessons from Leaders series. So just head to the website, theleadershipdoctors.com.